Stay ready is the mentality birthed through the trials and triumphs in life as an NFL long snapper. Join me in conversations with teammates, mentors, friends, and family who help me realize stay ready is so much more. A deeply rooted principle of life in all things faith, family, and football. From Music Row in Nashville, welcome to Stay Ready, the podcast. All right, man, we're back for another episode. And I got my really good buddy. Let's go back 20 years to old Western Washington University, home of the Vikes.
Yes, sir.
Michael Lisenby, everybody. Singer-songwriter, but He was also my former teammate in college at Western. And you moved here to Nashville. Has it been 2 years or is it over a year?
We just crossed a year on July 4th.
Yeah, July 4th. So you're here now, established in Nashville, all the way from the Pacific Northwest.
Yep.
I wanted to bring you on, man, because, we're former teammates, college buddies. Now you're here diving headfirst into Nashville with the music scene, taking on that career as a singer-songwriter. But I also want to talk about your transition from law enforcement to music. Music has always kind of been a passion of yours. I remember you maybe not strumming a guitar, but I kind of feel like you always had a voice. Did you?
Yeah, start? I mean, I sang a lot, like even just screwing around, but
yeah.
But
I feel like you were always humming, you were always singing,
yeah.
And you always had like naturally a very good voice. When I recall, like thinking about, because you and I played D-line, man.
Shit, yeah.
DLP,
baby.
D-line pride, but I just always remember like you were pretty good. Naturally.
God bless you. I had to pay him to say that.
Oh, man. But hey, welcome to the Stay Ready, the podcast. I appreciate you taking the time out, but this is a long time coming, man, because, when I think of like people who I want to bring on, I'm like, dude, Mike Lisenby's got to be on here, man. We have so much in common with our past through college and football and all that kind of stuff.
Too small of a world.
I know, but having one of my boys now here move to Nashville is pretty cool. And you moved the entire family here a while back, and you've really just kind of dove headfirst into this music thing. So let's go back a little bit. Let's reminisce about the old Viking days, man.
Yeah.
So Mike and I first met. I went to Western 2005 through 2008. So we met 2005.
Yep.
We played together.
You were at what, Diablo Valley or something?
Diablo Valley, yeah. DVC, man, represent. Transferred in with like Noel Tafoya, Ryan Davidson.
God, I miss those guys.
But we all played D-line together, which is the coolest thing. And we had like the greatest time. I know Western no longer has football, and that's one of the massive unfortunate things about it, because we don't have the opportunity to go back to campus for a game and reconnect with former teammates.
That nostalgia is kind of going to be missed for a little while.
It is, man. And hopefully they bring it back one day so that we can all reconnect. But talk about your time at Western. Did you, when you look back, was it one of the best times of your life? Was football awesome? Do you still keep in touch with guys from the team that we played with?
For one, football was awesome. That. And just, I think for me, it's like college was a different experience just because, I knew what I wanted to do. I knew since I was a kid, I wanted to be a cop. But I also knew I wanted to play ball in college.
Yeah.
So it was probably not, it worked out. And obviously, the good Lord's got our stories set for a reason, but it's like looking back, it's like, I only went to college just because I wanted to play ball and have good times in that, and because I knew I wanted to be a cop once I got out.
Yeah, well, Western was Division II football, so I would think for the most part, 90% of guys that are coming to play football there are for the pure passion and love for the game.
Facts.
They only had so many scholarships to give out, so let's just say half the team is not even on scholarship. You got 90 guys. So maybe roughly 40 to 50 guys actually have some sort of scholarship.
Right.
D2 has all these regulations, not a lot of money to go around. So guys are just purely playing, walking on.
Yep.
And so small town, small school football for us in the Pacific Northwest, there wasn't a lot. There was Western, there was Central, Western Oregon.
GNAC?
The GNAC, right? Humboldt State. We had to do a round robin and play each other twice a year because there wasn't that many D2 programs on the West Coast.
Right.
And then later on, we had to travel a little bit further to go to the Midwest where it's more prominent. But, dude, looking back at Western, it was truly like just pure passion of the game.
Yeah.
There was no egos. There wasn't all these guys trying to go to the league. Even coaches, like they're there as a stepping stone. They're there grinding. They're not
Yeah.
getting paid a lot of money to be
They're all
there.
trying to, they have their goals to get to that next
Sure.
spot too. But
Yeah.
it's like, but to me, it was a great time, and I think it was a great building block for like, mine and all of our work ethics, just
Yeah.
because,
Yeah.
it is a grind.
And you had
I
to
mean,
earn it, man. Look, dude,
it did.
we had a phone-a-thon to do like, hey,
Yep.
we need to raise money because we need new cleats or we need new
Yep.
shoulder pads or helmets. And like, dude, it was like we thought these were the sickest helmets back in the day, and these are like, just middle of the road kind of like helmets. But like we had to like fundraise every
Yeah.
year for travel suits.
Yeah.
You know what I'm
But
saying?
there was a cool, almost like a cool grind to that though. That was
Well,
just like
yeah.
that little bit of that grit too. Of just,
Well,
you,
everyone was in it together,
yeah,
and there
for
was
sure.
no like I said, the ego thing. Like there was none
Yeah.
because like we had to fight and scrap for everything we got,
Yep.
and we're not to mention we're on a campus where, you know, sports is not as important as academics.
Right.
So football for the longest time, they were talking about canning it forever. I mean, even when we were playing there was always a rumor like, "Hey, I heard this," or
Right.
"Hey, I heard that," or they're trying to get rid of football and for whatever reason, like when we're there, like they just, we scraped by.
Right.
We didn't have an on-campus stadium. We shared. I mean, we had an awful locker room. It was grimy
It
and grungy. It was like high school.
really
It
was.
really was. And so when it came to like the pecking order of athletics on campus, you know, most schools football is the cream of the crop,
Yep.
where it's the standard across all board. But for us, it was like we were like basketball took a precedent over this,
Basketball, volleyball, all
volleyball,
that stuff. Yeah.
soccer, and then slowly football just became less and less important.
Right.
And eventually they got rid of it. And that's not to say that we were bad. We had a good program,
Yeah.
and I remember the year that they got rid of the program. I think they went to a bowl game. They had a good season. I think they won the Rotary Bowl or whatever it was
Yeah.
when Coach Ross was there. Not to mention we had dudes going to the league out of the Junior Amabai, Shane Simmons. Like we had dudes that were
Yeah.
going somewhere.
Mike
Will
Keaton, Mike
Davis.
Keaton, you, just all you guys
Yeah, I
started
mean,
going.
guys that go to the CFL.
Yep.
So it was like Calvin McCarty, Ryan Lucas. We had some studs.
Folks are definitely getting traction.
Yeah,
That's for
yeah. So it
sure.
wasn't like we were just like this, like, black eye of football. No, like Western Washington was a legit program.
Yeah.
And Central Washington at the time was really good too.
Right.
So it's unfortunate that's gone.
Yeah.
But the friendships last forever.
Facts.
I think about, I still talk to Junior a lot,
Hell yeah.
James Day,
Hell
Ryan
yeah.
Lucas, Tafoya. Is there anybody in particular that you keep in contact with?
Honestly, lately it's just been you for the most part, just
Well,
because
naturally, we're
well,
here.
just because and I've on it, it's not that I've tried to avoid people. It's just like, and I'm sure we'll get into just especially the last couple of years for
Yeah,
me have been so much just personal battles and transition and just real gut checks on what direction our life's going to be. It's
yeah,
like a lot of my social life and stuff like that kind of was put on pause
sure.
just to get a grip on what's going on. But I mean, even guys like Lucas and those guys, they could Tony Duncan, like they all they were all at my wedding, and it's like
Yeah,
so
yeah,
I keep in touch with all these guys as much as I can,
yeah.
and but yeah, but it's nice that the dust has settled a little bit to try to really recap because a lot of these, like you said, these friendships, even though time has passed, it's like anything where you can just pick up where you left off, and it's just
And that's just,
there's not like an awkward on ramp. It's
yeah.
just like, what's up, fellas?
Because you go back to the times we spent together at
Yeah,
Western and Bellingham, which is one of the most beautiful campuses in the world. I mean, I
yeah,
will argue that to the day I die. I'll die on that hill that
it's true.
Bellingham is a special place. Whatcom
It's
County
true.
in general is incredible. It was funny because when I worked out for the Jags last week, Doug Peterson, the head coach, he's from Ferndale.
Okay, small
So
world.
he came up to me. He's like, "Hey, Western Washington, huh?" I'm like, "Yeah, let's go." He's like, "Well, I'm from Ferndale." I was like, "Shout out, man!" I was like Michael Kanan, Jake Locker, like
Yep.
we were talking about those guys, but like that corner of the country is like special. It's
Yeah.
unique. I mean, we have Mount Baker in the background.
Yep.
We got the lakes. We got the
The
ocean
Bay.
right there. So like geographically,
It's very unique.
it's very unique and it's very, very special. And so like our time for football, like, we're there to ball, but I think the bond outside of sport, like we kind of did everything together.
Yeah.
We went to the parties together. We tried to get in the same classes together because
Yeah.
Western's 15,000 undergrad students,
Yeah.
but it felt very, very small knit
Yeah.
and small tight community. So athletes, I kind of just
Shoot.
migrated together.
Well, and just like, yeah, like you said, everything together. Like,
Yeah,
bomb up. Everyone's like, hey, let's bomb up to Whistler. Let's bomb up to Baker.
exactly. Yeah.
Let's go float the river.
Let's go Lake
Let's go hit the
Whatcom. Let's go to
bay.
Patton, man. All
Let's
those places, bro.
go do
Like,
some cliff jumping over.
yeah,
But it just that posse just
yeah,
kept moving and just had those mutual experiences,
yeah,
which was very unique, but really
yeah,
pretty special.
yeah. So shout out Western.
Yep.
Go
Go
Vikes.
Vikes.
Bring football back, please.
Yes.
But let's talk about your transition after Western. So you talk about law enforcement. That's always been your passion.
Yeah.
So I come from a law enforcement family. My dad's a retired captain. My brother is currently active. I
Oh,
have a
shout
ton
out
of
to that.
friends, uncles who are, in that field. And at one point in my life, like, the dream for me was football, but secondary was like law enforcement. It was like in my blood. It's
Yeah.
very natural for me to get into it. I've been around it my entire life. My stepmom, at the time, she was a dispatcher, so it was like I was just kind
Heck
of
yeah.
always kind of engulfed in that world. My dad's best friends became my uncle.
Yeah.
Like I love those guys to death, and they're all cops.
Yeah.
And I remember doing ride-alongs with my dad, doing ride-alongs with friends and my brother, and it was the closest thing that I could feel to athletics in the sense of like the locker room, the
That
lineup
that
before the
camaraderie almost. Yeah.
camaraderie, the training, the discipline. Every day's different. The tasks, they're all different.
Yeah.
Everything is like it's a game plan. So when I thought of like, man, where can I get fulfillment outside of sport if football's not going to work out for me? Like law enforcement was like right there.
Right.
So there was a time when I had a fork in the road, like, hey, kind of had to sit down conversation with my dad, like, what do I want to do? Am I going to still keep pursuing this dream of football, or do I take the next step and apply to get into academy somewhere?
Right.
Football worked out for me, but ever since then, I've always had this extreme passion to support law enforcement, to use my platform to do ride-alongs in Indianapolis, to do SWAT training in California with
Yep.
Stanislaus County. Like I love that
That's
stuff,
dope.
dude. And so for you, where did that passion, kind of take off for you in regards to want to be a cop?
So very similar, like my dad was a cop for 25 years in Seattle, and
Mhm.
my mom was a dispatcher for a long time out there, and like we just a lot of service oriented in my family. Like my brothers were all EMTs and firefighters, and then even especially once my career started going, it's like we just inevitably had a pretty um, first responder forward family. Like all
Yeah.
my brother-in-laws are all cops. It really just ended up being just kind of a family tradition. If I
Yeah.
wanted
It's
to
kind of like
take
military.
off
Yeah.
after Hank Williams Jr. with just
Yeah.
it was just the thing that made the most sense. That
Yeah.
would just like it's like anything. It's like if your family's like come from a family of like just different craftsmen and stuff like that. Like that's what language you're kind of brought up in. So it
Yeah.
naturally feels like that fits. I'm sure just like yours, you just obviously had some
Yeah.
extra talents to
Not to
obviously
mention,
play ball.
it's one of the more pay wise. It pays well, coming out of college.
Yeah,
Finding jobs is incredibly difficult.
yeah,
I know, the benefits of it are great.
yeah,
There's obviously when you're at the bottom of the totem pole in law enforcement, like you're working the tough shifts, the midnight shifts, the weekend shifts,
sure,
you're working all the time. Like my brother, like has literally has like no days off, but he's just exhausting as much OT as he can. He's doing everything to try to get, SWAT certs and all that kind of stuff.
yeah,
But I saw it pay when I saw my dad get to the latter part of his career where he was now going from sergeant to lieutenant to captain and applying for,
yeah,
the different positions and seeing like, his retirement and his pension, all that kind of stuff. And a lot of cops were making that transition at that age where now they're exhausting their retirement at one department and transferring to the next department to collect another retirement.
yeah,
So I was like, man, like I think long term, like this could be it. Like this
yeah,
is sets you up well. Um, but again, this is around the time where things started getting a little shady and iffy with law enforcement, where it just like
yeah.
it went from this noble job to where like it just became demonized.
Yeah.
And so what year did you go straight from Western into an academy?
I finished Western on a Friday and I started the PD that Monday.
Did you relate with
I,
what with like county
I
or
started initially with the city of Monroe. It
okay.
was a smaller department out where I was from.
Yeah.
Just because I was 21 years old. In my mind, I just, I knew I wanted to be a cop.
Yeah.
It just, to me, it didn't, it just, the only thing that was up in question was what badge and patch I was going to wear. And
Yeah.
I wanted to get my foot in the door and
Yeah.
just start going. And, I got picked up early on, and it was a blessing for me. It was I had a great time there. I ended up I didn't once I got hired there, and so it was the summer of '07.
Okay.
So finished up there. It was school, started there, and was there for about 3.5 years. But then when the economy started going down,
Hmm.
towards the end of '08, '09,
Yep.
beginning of 10. We unfortunately were one of the cities that weren't doing too well financially, so they were having to make layoffs. So
Okay.
that prompted some urgency to find any place that was hiring at the time, because
Yeah.
again, the problem was the economy was going down, so there was also not a lot of people hiring. So I had to scramble, but luckily another nearby city,
Okay.
Kirkland, was just did a big annexation, so they were happened to be hiring a bunch. So I was like, threw my papers in that night, and
Yeah.
luckily, just by the good Lord, grace we go.
Yeah.
It's like we got in, and because my mortgage was due at the same time
Yeah.
that
No.
next
Right.
month, so
Yeah.
I had to step my game up and kind
Yeah.
of hustle a little bit. So I finished up there and did the rest of my time that at the city of Kirkland.
Okay, so I'd have to imagine like the physical test that you had to take was pretty easy for you because I'm gonna give Mike his flowers a little bit. Like dude was like one of the strongest dudes pound for pound on our
This guy,
team. Like this dude, no, for real,
yeah.
you were.
If only if we were trying to power clean during the
No,
PT test,
dude,
but
you were repping like 315 on the bench for like nothing. I'm like, gosh, dang, like you were that dude in the lot in the weight room. But like, was it fun to kind of now take your physical traits and skill to like another profession? Whereas, because I
yeah,
know, like for me, when obviously I see the test for that is that's easy. Like, for
yeah,
athlete, running a mile, push ups and pull ups, all that kind of stuff, like
yeah,
seems pretty easy. But to take your skill set, everything that you learn from football, and not trying to compare football to law enforcement, there's a lot of things that you can carry over that I feel would benefit you. So were you
100%.
excited to take kind of all the things that you learned from sport and translate that into law enforcement?
I think so, and I think a lot has to do with, and I learned pretty quickly on how much those net benefits were with, because there was kind of like we said, there's all the other auxiliary things physiologically that happens when you're doing that kind of, not only shift work in general,
Yeah,
but when you're also adding in those, just those different factors of violence and emotions,
sure.
and the highs and lows of adrenaline rushes and crashes. And it's
Yeah,
just like, and just the emotional trauma you either experience yourself or you go to, if you can control something like your physical ability,
yeah,
when you're then facing with those other things, you're able to either handle a little better, or you're able to process through it better.
sure.
Especially, if the obvious one is, if when you're getting in fights, it's like if you're physically able to handle yourself a little more, that confidence level is really can what get you through, because that'll, that confidence that keeps you calm, and calm is cool, and
Yeah,
you can then process through and make good decisions. Because really, at the end of the day, that's what, the important thing is, can you make good decisions under stress with little to no time to process?
yeah,
And that's really what the job was, is that you're going to these, Lord knows what the situation is. The tones go off, and you're trying to figure it out as you're heading there, going, quickly running code there. So you're already doing something that for most people would start pinging their internal RPM of just like they're at max capacity on just driving quickly through
yeah,
traffic, let alone you're trying to listen to the radio, coordinate who's coming from where, what the details are, and just so that way you can get there and solve the problem.
yeah.
It's like, so you're not doing anyone any good if you're already at your max processing level just by the knowledge of what's going on, let alone now you got to go do something to put
Yeah.
into action. So
And that's where I like to bring in like the sport aspect, especially football,
yeah,
because it's again, I don't want to compare, but it's easy to like look back at football. You get a call,
hmm,
you line up, you react off the play,
yep,
your intuition, your instinct kicks in on what you see, a guy coming at you, how do you
yep,
react? And so you take that skill set because honestly, like, you know, we go through a lot of adversity as an athlete, and a lot of it's physical and mental. The dog days of football practice, or you're in a game and you're just getting your butt whooped, or you have to make adjustments and adapt to the situation. Where I think like a lot of people that go into specifically maybe law enforcement have never experienced some sort of adversity like that,
yeah,
or haven't been challenged physically, mentally, and emotionally in certain settings where, as an athlete coming into this profession where you're talking about all these things that going on at once, where a lot of people may their reaction and the emotion gets so high that they can't function on the task, whereas you felt like maybe there was a benefit to athletic background to
For
come
sure.
in to help you in those situations.
For
Obviously it's
sure.
completely
Well,
different.
yeah, but like the skill sets or the building blocks are there.
Yeah.
It's like it's no different than like I still to this day look back and just like was one of the last travel days that I was on before because I got hired not too long after was I think we were out in excuse me like St. Cloud I think and
Okay, yeah, yeah,
we were down
yeah,
a good amount like towards the end and it was looking pretty rough
yeah,
and but everyone just like no,
yeah,
forget this and just one play later another like whether it was a turnover or a
yeah,
pick six and then it's like you can see the momentum changing where it's like if everyone already checked out
yeah,
and like once you started facing that adversity it's like it's easy to count yourself out
yeah,
but
yeah,
being able to have that like no I'm not going out like that
yeah,
it's
yeah,
like you can still come back and do it as long as you mentally in the game
sure,
I whenever I'd have new folks like when I was training them it would the way I'd articulate a lot of it was you know our job is very simple in a lot of ways
mhm,
in that it's simple as far as the linear answer to a lot of the problems. The challenge is being able to effectively do it though and put it in action. So it's
mhm,
easy to say 1 + 1 is 2,
yeah,
but to then go and do that or solve whatever problem is,
yeah,
that's where the challenge is.
yeah,
And it's easy to talk and kind of just chalk talk the answer, but okay, now go do it with the person that's
yeah,
not wanting you to have it done to, or go stop that fight, or go, be there. So it's that idea of just where the rubber meets the road of
yeah,
where no, that's the experience and that mental toughness and
yeah,
just that training and just that willingness to put yourself out there and to keep wanting to get better
yeah,
because it may very well someone else's life might very well depend on it and or your own. So it's imperative for y'all to just to be hopefully be on the best of your game because you talk about the pay and stuff like that. It's like people get it kind of twisted a little bit where it's like they'll get they'll see a cop pull over the side of the road just taking a break and they're like what are you getting paid for? It's like something someone said a while ago it stuck with me. It's like you're not paid for the little individual things you're doing. You get paid for what you might have to do.
yeah,
And that's not always doing like some real serious, but it's like, hey, he may have just came from a horrible crash. He may have just came from a nasty DV. He may have just personally got a phone call for something bad in his life that hey he still has to shove that because a call's coming. He's got to go. So all these different things that most people are not pervy to, but we still it's all honest to still
yeah,
put that professional hat on and go
yeah.
serve and do what we're supposed to do, and we'll deal with our stuff later, hopefully.
Did you have any idea of like just the potential, mental struggles, emotional struggles that the job would entail, like going into it? Obviously, we hear stories.
Yeah.
Like I'm sure your dad has shared several stories with you in his
Sure.
career. Obviously, you see TV shows, you hear, but in the
Yeah.
academy, do they really like? I know you go through a psych evaluation, you go through a lot of different processes to get hired and get through the academy, and they do their best to like really kind of weed out the weak, I guess you can say. But do you think like the academy really does a great job on prepping, the men and women that are now we all depend on to keep
I
us
mean,
safe?
it's weird because it's even just from, I was in the academy, like you said, like, 15, 16 years ago. It's
Yeah,
like, even just from that chunk of time since then, it's changed drastically
yeah,
and a lot of it has to do with politics and perception and just, I'm not trying to get political, but there is a balance of when you're talking about the effective ways of protecting and keep people safe
yeah,
isn't always nice and pretty,
yeah,
and for different reasons.
yeah,
But in your there seems to be a lot of priority on just the feelings of things in a perfect situation where we all know life's not perfect and evil exists, and we got to fight that as best as we can.
yeah,
But I would say that for the most part, the academy it's just there's good things because it exposes because there's honestly you get people that on paper are good candidates,
yeah,
but have never even touched a firearm.
yeah,
They don't even know which way the bullet goes in or comes out. They've never been in any kind of physical conflict. They've never had anyone raise their voice to them. So you have versus some of the versus some all the other but on the other extreme, like a super squared away like Navy SEAL or like Army Ranger or Delta guy coming in, and this is no problem for them. So you have the both sides of this, and
Yeah.
they're both getting the same program. And so the initial on ramp of the academy, it's truly for the most part, it gives them a little taste of what's going on. The Mainly gets them understanding and enough of like the laws and procedures to where you can go out and lawfully do your job.
Yeah.
Really, where the rubber meets the road is on the department to then and how structured and how squared away is their field training.
Sure.
Especially now, though, it's hard because, like you said, you hit on a little bit with the dynamics of how law enforcement specifically is perceived. It's like it's so demonized and what used to be a very honorable path to go. It's like the good folks that are qualified to do it, they're like, I don't know if I want this kind of drama.
Yeah.
And it's really hard because but it's still a needed profession to which we all see. So the folks that are now coming out, not necessarily the ones that would have probably had a chance to get hired a few years back, but now just based on absolute desperation for agencies, they've got to be bring people on and just pray it works out. And
Or they're extremely understaffed
well, that's what I mean. Like
and
they're
overworking.
so understaffed, and
Yeah.
the morale of their department is so diminished
Yeah.
because of things like, hey, the few folks that you have
Yeah.
now, they're getting overworked, they're getting run down, and then and they're all human, and it's
Yeah.
like, and then you factor in that you getting vacations denied, you're having to come in on when you're sick, you're having to work anniversaries, date nights, Christmases,
Yeah.
holidays, all the time because they don't have staffing. Those guys are there. It's like they're like, is this good for me physically and
Yeah.
mentally, and at what cost?
Yeah, my brother's going through that right now.
Yeah,
Like the department that my dad worked for almost 30 years is where my brother now works at.
yeah,
And growing up, man, like in the 90s, like, bro, I used to love going to the department,
yeah,
seeing the cars, seeing the SWAT outfits, like
yep.
going to the locker room and going on little ride-alongs and like just seeing my dad and his best friends, just like
There
the
was some honor and
camaraderie.
prestige there.
Yeah, yeah, but it was like the city had their back
Yeah,
too, whereas now it's like my brother, like the department has completely flipped on its head to
yeah.
what my dad went through. Completely different like environment. They hire from outside. They bring in these new chiefs who are
Bringing
extremely liberal,
bringing a
and
bunch of
there's
consultants that are going to come
exactly,
in.
and there's nobody in house that like truly like it's not the old school days anymore where you have the support. It's honorable. It's a noble job. It's now, like you said, it's just the people that were once qualified don't even want to do it anymore,
Yeah,
and now they're just hiring people for the sake of it, just for numbers or whatever the case may be. But my brother, it's like his little strong little team, like just slowly, like you guys are either lateral in other places or getting promoted, or it's just all the good ones, man. They're just like slowly breaking apart, and it's
yeah,
sad, man. It's because like I know my brother, he loves law enforcement. He wants to protect and serve. He wants to do a great job,
yeah,
but it's almost like they're not allowed to even do a great job because of new protocols and new whatever the case may be,
yeah,
or the city doesn't even have their back, and it's scary, man.
yeah.
So did you experience like that from like did you work in a city that was difficult to have the support, or did you feel like yours like Kirkland was
Yeah,
it?
the county I worked in, like King County it was rough just because it was very on the you know left on the political spectrum, and
Yeah.
they were we're 3 miles from Seattle, so we got a lot of that politics and bleed over from stuff. Now, I mean, I want to be careful because I mean the individual people like that I worked with, always did me right,
Yeah.
but you always still fought a lot of those battles politically
Oh,
and
sure. Yeah.
state wise because the state really made a lot of the direction on a lot of those laws, and a lot of the laws and stuff like that were getting passed. It made the job just about impossible at least to where you could be effective without putting yourself or others in danger yourself.
Yeah.
Where then it's like, well, it was always this strange thing where it's like it was very, it started getting very the line between criminal slash victim was starting to merge where they were looking. It was almost like they were portraying it as these criminals are only being criminals because they're really victims, so we should treat them as such. It's like,
Hmm.
well, that's not how it works
Yeah.
because they're committing crimes, and a lot of times very violent crimes. And if we can't have the ability to go stop that, and in this, and since we live in a non-perfect world and we're relying on other people's cooperation, because we somewhat joke about it. It's like if everyone just cooperated and complied with lawful directions, there would be no uses of force ever.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like people don't comprehend that. It's like those only happen when someone is breaking the law or not following what their
Yeah.
civic duty is, and during a reasonable process, and then either running, fighting, shooting, hiding, all that stuff, to where it's like, well, for the most part, we can't just let this person go because they're just,
Yeah.
it would stand to reason they're just going to keep continuing to do it, or there's someone that's in a real time danger situation for whatever they're doing
Sure.
that we need to stop. But we slip up one little inch because we're human. It's like not out of malintent or anything like that. It's just they're more quick to put us on the blocks. Well, and what happens? You're going to have guys that are going to be less apt to put their skin in the game to go do that and be like, oh, just let them run. Like,
Yeah.
because it became, especially during COVID and stuff like that, with all the riots and stuff, it became essentially an unspoken policy that they would much rather have you allow the crimes to continue or let the guy go,
Yeah.
and you just let them go versus risk a potential use of force that might look bad in the public eye.
Yeah.
And it's so backwards on, because the idea is that there's just such a, you know, willful ignorance on the idea that evil exists in the world,
Hmm.
and that, especially as believers, it's like we know there's evil in this world, and that's not going away.
Yeah.
But just to act like it doesn't exist, and that it's just there's nothing we do. There's a lot we can do.
Yeah.
People don't like the idea of having that conversation that evil exists, and that people are getting hurt because of it, and that policies that are being put in place are allowing that to continue at the expense of legit victims.
Sure.
And
Yeah.
it's just hard.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
just
I mean,
it's hard to see.
when you look at San Francisco,
Yeah.
I mean, it's like everything criminal related is like acceptable.
Yeah.
Breaking into cars, going into shopping malls, stealing whatever you want. I mean, it's like it's wild. And these officers, they don't have a taser no more.
Yeah.
All they have is their bare knuckle or a gun. And so it's just like
It's crazy.
they're now stripping, these tools from officers. But to your point too, it's like these officers don't even want to put themselves into harm's way.
Yeah.
They'll just let it go and they'll just bat an eye to it, for the sake of like, hey, I don't want this video to go viral of me handcuffing somebody, and if they're, resisting,
because it'll legit ruin their life. It's like,
yeah.
I'm here, I got called here
Yeah.
because this person is doing this.
Yeah.
It's like but there's no deterrence anymore. It's
Yeah.
like, I casually would, even just something as, I don't want to say simple, like, because they happen all the time. Like, take a DUI, for instance.
Yeah.
There's no accountability anymore.
No.
So I used to, every time I'd arrest a DUI, I'd ask the guy, like, or gal, like, hey, if you knew, because most of them are not getting booked into custody. Most of them can just refuse their stuff anyway,
Yeah.
and their lawyers are going to get them off with, as long as they pay enough money. It's going to be reduced down to like a neg or a reckless or something
Yeah.
very low key. I'd ask them, I was like, hey, if you knew, just throwing this out there random, like if you knew that if you got a pop for this DUI today, and that you automatically you could never have a driver's license again, and the next time you get caught driving, not only driving drunk, you get a year in jail. Would you have driven drunk tonight?
Yeah.
They go, oh, hell no.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, I've arrested hundreds of them. They all say the same thing, because they know the risk is worth the reward of just having their little thrill, because they know at the end of the day,
Slap on the wrist.
it's a slap on the wrist. And really, when you think about I think it was NHTSA put out a study, which is like the National Traffic Work. I can't remember the acronym. They basically set a lot of the traffic safety priorities for the country and stuff like that. They put out something where it's like, for every 100 or every one DUI that's arrested, there's like 100 to 1 DUIs that go unaccounted for.
Really?
And so it's just that you're not even scratching the surface, and especially the ones that get caught multiple times. So it's like you're not changing anything. We're just you're constantly we're playing on our heels, and it's just at the expense again of the public.
Yeah.
But if you start holding people accountable for these different things, people take notice. Like you said, like for the laws we were changing, like once the crooks knew we couldn't chase or pursue for like, unless it was like a serious felony that we knew was that guy.
Yeah.
No one was stopping.
Yeah.
You go to stop a guy for a cell phone or speed, they go,
Yeah.
because they know we couldn't chase him.
Yeah.
So what's causing more danger in the public? And now literally every time we try to make a traffic stop, all right, well, he's taking off.
Yeah. Or if you're in a sanctuary city, everyone's unaccounted for.
Yeah.
Is just let it go.
Yep.
You know, it's crazy to think that, like, and it's scary to think that
Yeah.
there's undocumented people in our cities all over the place. We have no idea who they are, where they're from, what they're doing, but we can't do nothing.
Well,
You guys can't do
and
nothing about it.
how quickly that stuff will develop. Like, you know,
Yeah.
there were several occasions, like when the riots in Seattle were happening, where they were so Seattle was so hands on deck with just like when their precincts were getting overrun and stuff like that, that they would call our neighboring
Yeah.
agencies, and we'd send cars. And so I remember when we would double up, we would be maybe 5 cars, so 10 of us, and we'd be out there shagging all the priority calls in Seattle because literally every cop in Seattle was towing the line, trying to keep their buildings from getting burned down.
Yeah. Did you have to go assist with it? What was the area that they,
A chop.
the chop?
We did. So the primary was Seattle in the corridor there, the main part of it,
Yeah.
and then which really, I mean, at the end of the day, that was such a disaster because it's
Yeah.
really there was nothing dealing with it. It was just trying to contain it. They
Yeah.
just let them do the things. So many horrific things
So people
happening
were
there.
getting like killed
It
inside
was
that, right?
horrific. Oh,
Yeah. And cops couldn't do
they
nothing.
wouldn't let because
Couldn't get
they
in.
wouldn't let you. No, you couldn't. No, you damn well could get in. They wouldn't.
Oh.
The admin in the city wouldn't let them.
Oh, okay.
They'd say, no, just we need it. This doesn't look good. And it's
Yeah.
like,
Yeah. Yeah.
there's so many people getting victimized in there. It was crazy. And
Yeah.
then, you know, it's funny is like they even were, I remember that there was some representative for like the CHOP Society
Yeah.
went down to like the state academy to try to apply for, I can't remember what the legality was. It was to try to like become like the CHOP marshal kind
Sure.
of thing, which it was weird when you think about it. Like there was actually some legality issues where it's like if they actually got that approved, like somehow they could have actually redesignated that as like their own little sanctity. And it was just it just boggles your mind. It was just like,
Yeah.
but versus things like you could have fixed that in a quick minute. You go, hey, call up all the neighboring agencies. Hey, we need everyone you can. We're gonna go down there. We're gonna line up. Give them all fair warning that
Yeah.
like, hey, you guys have 20 minutes to beat feet.
Yeah.
Anyone sticking around, you're all going to jail for a long time.
Yeah.
And if nothing else, because there's a lot of people there that were just there for to say they're there. They weren't hardcore. They weren't.
Yeah.
So
They're
you're
there
gonna,
to have a cell phone out with a video.
yes,
Yeah.
but you start actually holding them accountable.
Yeah.
80% of them would probably spook,
Yeah.
and the ones that are there, you're back to a good ratio numbers
Sure.
of you know of force on force there to where you can go take care of this problem, and that could have been done
Yeah.
in way quicker. But
Yeah.
it just set the tone for just it was just a black eye for law enforcement in general.
Yeah.
Just
And
it
not to
was
mention you go down the south of Portland and just the tragedy and travesty that they're still like
yeah.
experiencing.
Well, and you don't even talk about the victims like the business owners and
Yeah.
how many of those businesses were put out just if not from just damage to burglaries to just
Yeah.
they couldn't operate their business and
Yeah.
storefronts for what 2 months 3 months or however
Yeah.
long it was going. They couldn't do it.
Or no
It's
one's
like
gonna go travel down there no more to go
no.
buy coffee.
It's like
You
we're just
know?
the people that owns homes there, their
Yeah.
valuation went down like crazy. It's like so all these secondary things of
Yeah.
letting that stuff just spool off was
Yeah.
just it was just sad.
Yeah.
And it's all political.
Oh, sure. Yeah. So, like, let's maybe touch if you want on just kind of the struggles that you had faced as an officer. When did you entered in 2007?
Yep.
When did you officially retire?
Officially, this February.
So it's been official.
Yep.
So what's that?
So I think it was like 15 and a half
15,
years.
yeah,
something like
15
that.
years. So at what point did you start? At what point did it start taking a massive toll on you?
So,
Um,
I mean, you know, a lot of it's, you know, I didn't really understand it as much as I did until it really started hitting me in the face
yeah,
with how cumulative trauma was.
yeah,
And, you know, and it's not as talked about as often because obviously if it was, you probably have less people want to come out because of what, you know, you're seeing and doing. But like, you know, I remember seeing a stat one time where like the average person, you know, will encounter or be experienced like 1 to 2 major like traumas in their life, whether it's a physical trauma, emotional trauma, things like that,
yeah.
where the average beat cop will experience 800.
Wow.
And not necessarily them as like a victim,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
you're in it, you know,
You're seeing something
you know, it's
that's
like, you
yeah,
know, you've been to, you know, so many deaths, suicides, murders,
yeah,
rapes, you know, all these things that they're still taking chunks of your soul and every time,
yeah,
and you're just supposed to rinse it and go to the next call. It's
yeah,
like, so there wasn't a whole lot of, you know, readily available ways to deal with that because it's still, you know, at that scale it was still, you know, getting worked out.
yeah,
But I know for me, um, a lot of those, you know, honestly, one of the first ones that kind of really made things, serious for me was, especially as, coming out of football and stuff. I was young, strong, I could take on the world. And, early on, like I just got on our SWAT team back, in like '09. And, like one of my instructors, Mark Reniger, super squared away dude, like just across the board, SWAT team leader, Army Ranger, just squared away guy. Really looked up to him, and then graduated my SWAT class, and then a couple weeks later, he was one of the four in the Lakewood Four shooting where they all got ambushed at the coffee shop and got murdered right there.
Hmm.
And as a young copper, looking up to some of these guys, I'm just like, well, shit, if that could happen to him, who it's like that was a big moment for me of like, because I'd been in fights, I've been in things like that. I could hold my own because I was
Yeah.
strong, fit,
Yeah.
former football player. But you're a learning occurred for me was like it's one thing to be able to see your threat and account for it, but now it really switched me on. I got to start accounting for a lot of these threats that I don't see coming,
Yeah.
and that already starts putting that your mindset in a different space. So that built on. Actually, I just literally put out an acoustic song today about that incident.
And what year did that shooting occur?
That was '09.
'09. And that's even before, like, I remember 2013 is kind of when you start seeing this, like, now
This trajectory.
trajectory where, like, now police are being targeted. Obviously, the media is now blowing these stories up massively to portray like any sort of police involved with shooting was
Yep.
unjustified. I mean, you talk about the Dallas shooting. You talk even in California. One of my best friends, Joel, his sergeant was killed in one of those, mass shootings
Yep.
that was targeted. It was premeditated. Um, and so yeah, I think reflecting on him, and I don't want to speak for him, but it sounds very similar to you, to where I think early on, like they make the rookies do the hard, like nasty stuff, like the dirty stuff,
Yep.
like, hey, dude, there's a dead body in there. Why don't you go scrape the body up?
Yep.
Go bag it up.
Yep.
They
There's a
make
good
the
there's a good gooey one in there. Go
yeah,
get it.
yeah, yeah. So, and I think early on in his career, he was doing that stuff. He was working
Yep.
the city of Oakland.
No, don't get me wrong. That's needed
No, for
because a
sure.
lot of that is especially when you have the guidance of someone that's been there.
Yeah,
It's not. It's a little bit. And it's kind of a little bit. It's a little bit of that. I don't want to say hazing, but it's like it's kind of a rite of passage where it's like you've also
yeah.
got to show that you can handle that
I
because
get
there's a lot
that.
of people that like
Yeah,
have walked into their first dead body that's smelling a little south of proper,
yeah.
and they quit the next day.
Well,
They
sure.
just can't do
I
it.
understand that, but
Yeah.
I think from the mental toll it
Yeah.
takes on you, you experience a lot of that kind of stuff, but then it really hits home when you experience something like you experienced, where
Yeah.
one of your best buds goes down, and it was the same for him, where it's like, wow, like, yeah, I've seen all this stuff, and I kind of knew going into it I would see this kind of stuff, but when something like this happens,
Yeah.
now you feel like there's a target on your back. That's like it kind of there's a perspective shift that really takes place,
Yeah.
where it's like, dude, now I can't even enjoy a cup of coffee at Starbucks with
Yeah.
my boys. I got to watch our back everywhere we go.
Well, and it changes the perspective too, because especially then I was still a single guy.
Yeah.
That whole game changes. Once you get married, you throw a
Yeah.
ring on, and then even more so when you start having kids, because
Yeah.
now it's not just about me.
Yeah.
Like, if I got killed, it was like, yeah, it would obviously suck, but I didn't have a legacy or people I was responsible for. Where now it's like that game gets a whole lot more real the more you start adding those in the picture. And
Sure.
so all that stuff started adding up,
Yeah.
a lot of stuff. And I mean, obviously for me, a big turning point for me was, I ended up getting in a shooting, a couple years ago now, and it was hard for me on obviously being, it's for what it was, but for the after the fact things because of how the situation played out.
Mhm.
Because the guy he was trying to kill his own son, and the son was 18 months old and was he was strangling him out. And to this day, like, because he was the same size and look as my son at the time. And so when it all went down, because I would have these after it was, I did what I had to do to stop the threat. The guy was holding the kid, strangling him, and I'd end up shooting him because it was just going through my checklist of what the situation was. The priority is in this case to save the hostage or the kid,
Mhm.
and obviously we try to mitigate that with our decision making process. With if we can end it non-violently, that's great. But if those options are at the expense of putting the victim in more danger, those don't apply.
Hmm.
So it's you always have to choose a scenario that's reasonably going to be the best case for the victim.
Yeah.
And so ultimately, that's why I end up having to, you know, end up having to shoot that guy. Um, but the hard thing for me was, well, just obviously going through that process was, um, for ever after that, I would have this 20-second loop because basically the guy was strangling his kid. He had the kid's head like this, and he was about to damn near pop his head off. So I shot him in the forehead. Um, but what was tweaking me out forever after that is, everyone's doing, the great job. You did awesome. You did what you needed to do. But I was terrified because it was in my mind forever after that. I would have this 20-second loop of he was holding my kid, and then I would go to do the same process, the same checklist of mental processes and decision making, but I would because I had my rifle when I did it, and I didn't account for my offset, which is like where you're seeing through optics
Yeah.
and the barrel, the line of sight and bore for the bullet and stuff. It's different. So it's after close, it's like even though your crosshairs are on target, there's
Yeah.
actually like a 2.5 to 3 inch gap. So you have to account for that, especially if it's precision. So in this nightmare reel I would have like probably 100 times a day, I didn't account for the offset. I shoot, but I shoot my kid in the head,
Yeah.
and it would just it would just destroy me. And it started me down a pretty hard spiral of I hated my job, this job that I loved. I hated being at work. I every time I would go and I would just stuff it and I would hide it, and then you know COVID starts happening where we're all getting all that drama with all their stuff. So you're just continually having to stuff and just continue because like I'm the guy.
Yeah.
I'm on our SWAT team. I'm on our firearms. I'm the main one of the main guys. I'm the guy that wants to be first in the door. It's like I've got to maintain that image.
Hmm.
I can't show this weakness because they need me.
Yeah.
And so I just kept stuffing, stuffing, stuffing until I couldn't stuff it anymore. To where I'd be in the patrol car and I just anytime any call was related to anything around that situation. Um, I would just have these massive panic attacks in the car.
Yeah.
And kind of like what I was talking about earlier with like you have to start processing through and when you're driving to a call and how to deal with that call because it's intense. Like I'm now fighting my own internal panic and anxiety because what Murphy's telling me, like Murphy's law, is that I'm gonna get in another shooting, but I'm gonna screw it up and I'm gonna go to prison,
Hmm.
and someone else is gonna raise my kids and family, and that would terrify me.
Yeah.
And so I was so averse to wanting to do the job that I love forever. And it was breaking me down. Like I would be driving to these calls, screaming in my patrol car, doing everything I can to calm down in that mile and a half drive to wherever the call is going to, so that when I get out, I can
Yeah.
be Mr. Professional again and go handle this next problem that I've got to go deal with,
Yeah.
just to then hopefully get out of that, get back in the car, and can just go back and hide somewhere
Yeah.
because I was not in a good space. And it started manifesting physically in a lot of ways. Like I started getting a lot of like my blood pressure was through the roof, and at the
Hmm.
time I was still a relatively young, fit guy. So it's like, but I have the blood pressure of like a 70-degree 2 pack a day smoker,
Yeah.
and it's like it didn't make sense. And like my libido was down. It's like like my drive to do anything was down. I had nothing. I'm like, so of course, what do I do? Hey doc, I need a blood test because maybe I'm low T or I got something I need to just so like give me a pill so I can feel
Yeah.
better. The typical response. I go there and they're like, hey, no, your blood's looking fine except your blood pressure is crazy high, and I can't remember the chemical right
I have to
now, but
imagine you're sleep deprived. I
oh
mean,
yeah,
were you
your
was
sleep's
yeah,
terrible. You
you're
can't because
just
it's nightmares every night.
yeah, yeah,
It's like, and again with that stress, but the cortisol, your cortisol levels are off the charts, which
yeah,
is your stress response
yeah,
hormone. So you're constantly, so your mind is when you're reliving these visions and stuff like that. What people don't realize, there was a book that we learned about, like when I was at this um, post traumatic stress place, where it's called Your Body Keeps the Score,
hmm,
where it's like, when you experience trauma like that, especially unresolved trauma, anytime you think about it, your mind is prepping your body
yeah,
for that to happen again. So
yeah,
you're getting that that adrenaline response, that cortisol response, even though nothing's happening, you're just reliving it in your mind, but your body's thinking you're going through it again. So you're almost reliving those same experiences over and over and over again. So you're just draining, just depleting yourself
Yeah.
because your body's telling you, hey, you got to deal with this.
Yeah.
The wheels are falling off. That's what, all these different signs of, the blood pressure, the physical stuff, some IBS stuff. Like my body was just breaking down.
Yeah.
And again, my initial response is just go down, just keep going along
Well,
because
and
it,
that
it'll
and that
pass.
and that goes back to football too in sports. It's like, man, water makes you weak. You don't need a
Yeah,
break. You don't
right.
need this. Don't show weakness. Don't show vulnerability. And that's a lot of things that we go through. But in this particular circumstance that you're dealing with, I mean, did your wife have any idea of how much struggle? Were you married at the time?
Yeah, yeah,
Did she have any idea of the struggle or the
yeah.
severity
And
of
she,
it?
she revealed that to me down the road, and I think it was, you know, there was because obviously there'd be times we weren't nearly as intimate as we were in the past, and that was obviously a change, and
Yeah.
she obviously noticed that, and just I was cold and I was short. And the other thing that I was coping with is that I was doubling down on what I felt I would made me important, which was work stuff. So
Yeah.
I was doubling down on overtime and picking up shifts and being
Yeah.
out there, being available. Because really, what I was doing in a lot of ways is I was suppressing my own hurt and pain by trying to be distracted by this other stuff that
Trying to stay busy.
trying to stay busy
Yeah.
with something I felt I had value
Yeah.
in, and that was not the best thing for me.
Yeah. But on the flip side, like solitude and like would be awful too.
Yeah,
I mean, just you and your thoughts alone,
yeah.
I mean, it would drive you insane.
It was terrible. It
Yeah.
was terrible. It really didn't come. Really, some of my turning point was obviously music was a big part of that. But even like the transition of getting out, like my brother-in-law was in a pretty gnarly shooting too, and he ended up going to a spot in Utah called Deer Hollow, and he saw the writing on the wall too with me, and he kind of was one of the first ones that was like, "Hey, just let's be real. Like
Yeah.
these are some good folks. They're there for the right reasons.
Yeah.
Give them a shot. Just talk to them."
Yeah.
And that progressed. I initially had a conversation with them, and not too long after, I was having another breakdown, and the doc was like, "No." I told him my whole story, and like, well, kind of went down the road of, okay, you're officially essentially diagnosed with you've got some post traumatic stress related to this stuff.
Yeah.
And no different than what was refreshing from them. They looked at it no different than a broken leg
Yeah.
as an injury. It's like
And
and
who's
that
they?
that
Your department?
that was the one of the doctors that I initially had
Okay.
to see. So I kept the department in the dark for as long as I could because I didn't want to share that this. I was hoping it was going to be something I could go to burn some sick time, go get this figured out, and then be right as rain.
Okay.
It wasn't until I really got started diving deep into what I needed to
Yeah.
start being right for myself that a lot of that trauma stuff, they say it's like anything. It's the best way to heal from it is you have to separate yourself from the causation and
Yeah.
and then allow yourself to heal. Where if you just continually just stay in that cycle, you're constantly just ripping that band-aid off, and
Yeah.
you're never essentially going to heal.
Yeah.
Um, so ultimately, I went to that place in Utah. It was 35 days. It was one of the hardest but amazing experiences though that I had ever gone
And up to
through.
this point, when you decide to kind of check yourself into this therapy,
Yeah.
I mean, you really didn't share the story with any of your coworkers or sergeant or lieutenant or anybody that you really opened up. I mean,
Yeah, I had one supervisor, a good buddy of mine. I gave he he was obviously a great friend of mine, and he just happened to be one of my supervisors. I gave him like I was like, "Hey, bro, just let you know because you're gonna hear it soon, but I'm gonna be taking off for a while to go
but
sort through."
how from the incident to the time you decided to check yourself into this therapy to really address the issue, like how long were you dealing with this?
2 years.
That's a long time.
Yeah.
So that whole 2 years, like you really sought no help. You really kind of just try to shove it away and shove it under the rug and
Yeah,
hide your
quite the
emotion.
opposite. I was still on the like I was on our peer support team and stuff like that, where I was trying to just shove my stuff because my greater purpose was to still help others,
Yeah, yeah,
and it wasn't a while. Took a while before it was like I can't help others if I'm also breaking down
yeah,
and not able to help myself
yeah,
because so a lot of that, yeah, I danced with those demons for a long time
Yeah.
until I just couldn't anymore.
Yeah.
And then, God put it on my heart and just said, "Hey, I'm going to keep putting these roadblocks in front of you until
Yeah.
you finally start listening."
But even after the isn't protocol, don't you take like a leave if there's any officer involved shooting, is there like the time,
Yep.
the leave time where
Yep.
obviously there's an investigation, there's
Yep.
a lot of internal stuff that goes on, there's maybe possibly an external company comes in to
Yep.
evaluate the situation,
For
and
sure.
you're on a leave, right?
Yeah.
How long was that leave for you?
Mine was about, I think, 3.5 weeks.
Okay, so really not that long at
And
all.
really, but a lot of that is, you know, it's kind of like a two in one kind of thing where a lot of it's for that, hey, give some separation, obviously you're involved in an incident, but also there's a part of a legal side of it where we have to make sure that there was no, maliciousness or,
Yeah.
any kind of, there was, it seems like it's checking out, like it's within policy and stuff like that procedure. Cause obviously if there's any questions about the shooting,
Yeah.
you as a agency, they can't put you back on the road
Yeah. Yeah.
pending something that could
Sure.
potentially be criminal.
Yeah.
So they have to make sure that that's all squared away. Which when my stuff came back, it was all fully cleared and justified.
Yeah.
Which is actually interesting that the county I'm in or was in, they have their own separate inquest process that is still not over. I actually just got notified that it's probably going to happen this fall. So again, getting ready for that, which is just a whole separate thing for involving shootings with
Yeah.
them. So I got to figure out what I'm gonna do or how that's gonna play out with
Yeah.
whether I have to go fly back to do that or if they can do a remote thing. But
But even that 3.5 weeks you were off, like, they don't offer any sort of support for
they,
therapy
so
or
they,
psych eval or
a lot of it. There's some stuff, but it's very much self-driven.
well, it's for them to check their boxes, right?
Yeah,
To
it's like anything. It's very a la carte where
yeah,
there's not a lot of like mandatory stuff because you're starting to blur this line of, you know, truly dealing with like medical health where it's like they can't really
yeah,
order you to go do some. They have to do there's some minimum things like you said before they can clear you back for duty. You
yeah,
have to see the psychologist. You've got to go through and like requalify on your pistol and things like that, your firearms because
yeah.
some people after a shooting it's like now they're terrified of
Firing it
the
again.
gun
Yeah,
go off. It's like it's a
yeah,
real thing, and it's not a knock on them. It's like
yeah.
it's just it happens, and so there's just things that they've learned. They've got to check those boxes before they can reasonably put you back out there and start handling calls
But you
again.
kind of just save face through that process and like, I'm good, I'm good, I'm good. Or I mean,
Yeah,
were you good at the moment, and then it just over time it slowly started just
I
to
think
weigh
I
on
was
you?
I think I was still very much in denial that it happened.
Yeah,
Like it just it took a long time. Like I mean, I was having those same nightmares and stuff like that, but I would still shake it off.
yeah,
Like
yeah,
th- this didn't happen. Like
yeah,
like I don't just it all just it just happened so quickly in the
yeah,
process of just, but I think just the gravity of a lot of it just kept chipping away at me.
yeah,
The more,
yeah,
especially once I was back on the job and starting to go to more calls and
yeah,
like
yeah,
some close, I had a couple of times where it was like there was another couple of chances where it was like that this is it, but then I go right back into like make sure you don't because in your
yeah,
mind
yeah,
it's going to go bad, so you
yeah,
better find another answer or
yeah.
remove yourself or let the guy go or do what you got to do
Sure.
because in that selfish self-preservation
Yeah.
preservation mode of what I've been where hurt my mind has been telling me
Yeah.
and really all it is it's your body and mind don't want to go through that again, so it's really that fear and anxiety. It's really what we learned. It's a protector. Your
Yeah.
body and mind are trying to protect you from going through that again.
Yeah.
And if it's got to be their mind telling you this lie that it's going to go bad, if that's going to help keeping you from doing that in your body and mind, that's a win.
Yeah.
So it's a weird thing for that fear as a protector kind of thing, which I never knew about
Yeah.
until we learned at that place I was at. But it made a lot of sense of why that you know it's not a bad thing. It's just not appropriate for the process, or let alone what the job you're asked to do is like. You've got to put yourself out in those situations.
Yeah.
So if you're having this big, you know, you know, reaction to not want to do that, it's like, and to have these physical manifestations, the breakdowns, it's like it's not. I wasn't the I wasn't the guy for that job anymore,
Yeah.
and that was a hard pill to swallow because that was such a huge part of my identity,
Yeah.
and that was probably one of the biggest hurdles. Once I kind of went down that road of the best thing for me and my family is that I might have to go do something different. I don't know what that looks like
Yeah.
because this is all I've done. It's like you said, it's
Yeah.
good pay and benefits, pensions, all that stuff. It's like this is all I've known since I was
And you
wanting to be
loved
a
it.
kid, and I loved it.
Yeah.
And I never had a plan B.
Yeah.
That was the thing. It's like, and I just never did it because in my mind, I was
You're
like,
doing it forever.
I'm never gonna get hurt. I'm gonna
Yeah.
do my 35 years. I'm gonna retire. I'm gonna
Yeah.
do all this stuff, and then I'll get the gold watch, and then
Yeah.
go sail off in the sunset.
Yeah.
Well, that got cut short, and so I was having a big, you know, come to Jesus, like literally of like, what do you want me to do? Because I don't know what the answer is,
Yeah.
and I had to give all that up, that control, and just go, hey, God, what am I supposed to do?
Sure.
Because I know I was supposed to do a lot of this stuff, and if my whole time in the PD was for that moment to save that kid, I chalk that up as okay, it was worth it.
Okay.
You know, if that's my story and that if that's what my road had to be, I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
I still need to figure out what I'm going to do after that
Yeah.
because I still got a wife and kids that I got to take care of and just be healthy in myself. So it's like that prompted a lot of like all the doors related to the PD side of things and law enforcement were closing, and then slowly but very clearly, things related to music started opening.
Yeah.
And my wife was like, we'd come out to Nashville before, like once to go play, well, to play Whiskey Jam,
Yeah.
and because I'd started writing music more, and that became a really good therapy for me. I
Mhm.
started writing a lot of my pains and struggles down,
Yeah.
including like, one of the breakthrough moments for me. I was sitting in the bed, my wife was sleeping, and I set my guitar. I was strumming. This was just a couple weeks after my shooting, and I started just strumming some chords, and the line that popped in my head was like, "Lord, I come to you. There's a pain I'm walking to." And it was literally the pain or the prayer I was having walking up to the scene as I'm standing on scene and then immediately after, and I just started losing it right on the bed. And I'm just strumming this guitar, and I wrote this song in like maybe 10 minutes, and it's literally just the prayer I was having, and it's just like, okay, then maybe there's something here that I should be paying attention to, because that was an outlet that I obviously kept penning up for a long time. Um, so that kind of one lead led another. I
And
just
that
kept.
was that like officially like your first song that you wrote?
No, I mean, I'd written a couple things before that, just kind of just tinker around a little bit, but I'd
Yeah.
never, and I did I was still involved in music. I was doing like the cover band thing and things
Yeah.
like that, but I was never really, I wasn't putting a lot of stuff out or anything like that. I was still learning. It was just an outlet for me.
Yeah.
And, but slowly I started writing more and just kind of allowing myself to kind of go to that vulnerable place
Yeah.
and just tell the stories that both either stuff that I experienced or things that I'd seen, or just, and hopefully it helps somebody. And
Yeah.
like that kind of just kept developing, and that itch kept growing. And, I ended up reaching out to Ward at Whiskey Jam. I was like, hey, I know this is kind of a rite of passage here. And it's a very, prestigious thing to play Whiskey Jam. If there's any chance I can get on a lineup, I will fly out to
Yeah.
Nashville. And I didn't think he would take me up on it. Just because it's like I'm some nobody out in the Pacific Northwest, never been to Nashville, nothing like that. And he ended up hitting me back. He's like, "Yeah, man, what do you think? Could you do this date in March?" And just it got really real. And I was like, "Oh."
Yeah.
So I mean, long story short, we flew out, we did
Yeah.
that, and it changed my whole perspective on that that excitement of that I had my entire life of being a cop. It almost like seamlessly started transitioning of like I'm finding that again in music,
Yeah.
and it was like, oh, this could be a reality. It's like, so past that, because then not too long after that was when I ended up going to the Utah thing that really cemented the idea that I've got to separate out, and that maybe music's an option. And then one thing led to another, and just at that point, like my wife was like, well, if we are doing this, if you're getting out, why don't we just move to Nashville? And that kind of took me back because I'd never said those words out loud.
Yeah.
And to have her be the first one that say it, it was like, okay, maybe God's putting this on not just my heart, but it's on hers too. And it's preparing her heart as well. And I remember even before a lot of that stuff happened, I think it was even before my shooting, it was like we were out in the hot tub, and like I felt something in my heart. There's like, I don't know this is like, early 19. I was like, I don't know what it is, but God's put something in my heart that just says, just get ready.
Yeah.
And which, and just, I didn't know what it meant of like, we're having another kid, or because we've always talked about adopting and things like
Yeah.
that. And then, that was right before COVID started kicking off. It's like, I don't know what that meant, but just get your hearts ready, be ready,
Yeah.
stay ready.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So lo and behold, it just, things lined up to where the decision to get out of law enforcement was happening. Then what that looked like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Like as far as like, I mean, I, coming out here as a starving musician, like just in the middle of where every musician and songwriter is here. But some good friends of ours, they were looking at buying a house, and like we kind of cued them in on what our plans were a little bit, and they were like, "Hey, low key, just no pressure, but we love your place. Whenever you're ready, just let us know. We'd love to buy it."
Yeah.
And we're like, God, when you're coming out with these clear things, it's like
Just keeps knocking you over the
it
head
just
with,
it
yeah.
is. I mean, and they literally we set a price, and they were like, "Yep, sounds good,"
Yeah.
and we were able to do off market with them. You were out here, and I'm like, "Hey, Matt, I don't
That's
know
when you
what
hit me
I
up, man.
I,
Hey, we're thinking about moving to
I
Nashville. I'm
didn't know."
like,
I was like,
all
"Hey,"
right,
I was like, "Hey,
let's go.
you're the only." I was like, "I know you were messing around in real estate. I know we're probably
Yeah.
in a little."
Yeah.
Like we're probably not going to be in Nashville, but we're trying to figure it
Yeah.
out. And but here's what we're kind of looking for, and you hooked it up and just you
Yeah.
nailed it out. I mean, that was a big scary process that
Dude, for
you
sure.
were
Yeah.
a huge blessing in that process
Yeah.
because that was a huge stress that I was able to just kind of offload and just go, hey, here's what we're looking for. It's like I don't know
Yeah.
what this looks like. I don't know if it's just going to be let's find a this will work for now house.
Yeah.
Just like because we have so many parts moving in this
Yeah.
process, let's just get to Tennessee
Yeah.
and we'll figure it out. And
No, it was a blessing for me, man. First, I mean, for you and your family to trust me and finding that home for you guys out here. Little shameless shout out if you're looking for a house in Nashville, hit your boy up.
facts,
No, but no, you hit me up and you're like, hey, we're making this massive life change. Not only are you putting because people would come out here for law enforcement. Essentially, you're quitting law enforcement and now you are taking on this new endeavor, a passion of chasing the music and the dream, and
you know,
as a singer songwriter. And you hit me up. You're like, hey, let's look at some houses. And I remember the um,
we had you going everywhere.
first few houses though, like there was some that you really liked, and this
Yeah,
is the tough part of being an agent is like, ah man, it's already under contract,
sure.
or man, like it's whatever the
Just
case
things
may
that are
be.
out of your
Yeah,
control.
yeah, yeah. So I'm like, hey, the right one's gonna come. The right one's gonna come. And sure enough, found you a beautiful home out in Dixon, and you guys moved out here, made the leap,
Yeah. Sight
and
unseen. We did one FaceTime with you and you
I
were out
know,
there.
right?
We're like, put an offer
Let's
in.
go, let's go.
Just
We
let's
got it.
go.
Yeah.
And
All right, so let's talk about Whiskey Jam.
yeah.
So you came into town, you got on the lineup for Whiskey Jam, and for those who don't know what Whiskey Jam is, it's kind of like it's Tuesday nights, right? Is it Tuesdays?
It's Thursdays and Mondays,
Oh
I
well,
think.
I got that completely screwed
Yeah.
up. But anyway, it's a tough card to get onto as an artist because it's a massive platform.
Yeah.
It's at Winners, right?
Yeah.
It's at Winners.
Small stage, but a big
Small,
footprint,
yes,
or
big,
big platform, but small
and
stage.
every big name has been on that stage
Yeah.
at one point in their career, whether
Facts.
they know who Luke Combs is
Yeah.
or they don't. But I remember when Luke Combs played there I moved here in 2017, and when they put, I think Hurricane had just come out, and
Yeah.
when they put him on Whiskey Jam, dude, it was like you couldn't even get in.
Right.
Like all of Midtown, like that whole winners and losers area was packed.
Right.
But so every big name essentially has been on that little small stage and so for you as this like new like
Nobody.
artist, right?
Nobody.
And this being like your dream, and for you to get on that stage pretty early on was incredible. But talk about your experience, like now that you're going to be on that stage, you're seeing who's performing before you and after you, seeing like how much talent is here in Nashville. When I came to watch you play, I was watching you, and this is my first time
Which
seeing.
shout out to you because you guys were like if Bree did one more jumping jack, she's about to have a
Yeah, I
baby,
know. I
right?
think yeah, it was just like,
So
hey, I'm gonna
shout
sneak
out.
out for an
You're like,
hour
I
to go see
might be
my
able to
boy.
come, but we also
Yeah,
might be in labor.
I
I'm like,
know.
hey, no pressure,
Yeah, I
man.
snuck in. I'm like, cool, watch my boy Mike play. But this is my first time seeing you play. I've seen some things on Instagram up to that point, but getting to see you on the stage and perform for a live crowd, um, I mean, I was like anxious for you
Yeah.
because this is a massive opportunity for you. But then just to see like the talent that comes on that stage day in and day out is incredible. And these are
Yeah.
all like no name people. I remember this one girl, I think she was performing before you or after you, but I was like sitting back like, dude, like this chick is the real deal.
Right.
And no one in the crowd even knows her name.
Right.
So to my point, it's like, gosh dang, like how stressful and how like daunting is it to like put yourself out there at such a early stage of like this career you're trying to chase, and just to like have your eyes wide open, like, dude, this is a talent that I'm like, and everyone else is going against, and these are like nobodies.
Right.
How am I ever gonna make it?
Right.
Right. So, what is your thought like? Obviously, you're excited for Whiskey Jam, but I mean, what was your experience like? What was your perspective?
Like I said, it was very surreal because, like I said, it's literally one like the stage that most folks they want to get in and play,
Yeah.
especially early on. And then Ward, shout out Ward, he's awesome. I mean, he's unofficially like the mayor of Nashville
Yeah.
as far as like having his thumb on just the music pulse of what's going on.
Yeah.
And couldn't be a better dude.
Yeah.
Um, it it was just very, I don't know. It was a very just it was a crazy moment, but I had to just kind of just trust that like it was very validating for me as far as like because it was such a good experience. And like even though it's like, I think there's a lot to be said about yes, it's Nashville. It's
Yeah.
like there's crazy talent. It's like so it doesn't do me any good to like I need to be the next Luke Combs
Yeah.
or
Yeah. Yeah.
Wallen
Yeah.
or any of these
Yeah.
guys. It's like I just need to be me because at some point no one knew who they were either. But what I need to remember is just be authentic and just I've got stories that they don't have.
Yeah.
I've got experience they don't. Yeah, yeah, I may not be up for CMT awards things like that at any time, but I know there's people out there that are gonna benefit from the stories and my experiences,
Sure. Yeah.
and I feel like I have it. I can. It's in my wheelhouse to portray that through song,
Hmm.
and I think that was important to me because especially at Whiskey Jam because one of the songs I played was actually the one I just threw a live version out today, the one I wrote about the Lakewood shooting.
Hmm.
So it's like I'm here in Nashville at Whiskey Jam and I'm playing this very important. I mean, I to this day I barely get through it without choking up.
Hmm.
It's that important to me, and I know it's important to those. So it's very subjective
Yeah.
to what is, but it's also universal as far as like when you lose people that are close to you when they were taken before they were supposed to go.
Yeah.
So playing that kind of stuff in a crowd like that, where they don't owe me nothing.
Yeah.
They don't. They're not. There's no friends. There's no
Yeah.
hometown crowd. This is Nashville.
Yeah.
This is Music City. This is Music Row.
Yeah.
It's like, and they loved it,
Hmm.
and like, and that was a huge moment for me of just like, okay, Lord, I'll take that next step.
Yeah.
I don't I don't know where
Yeah.
how far down this road's going to go, but
Yeah.
he gave me enough light in those moments
Hmm.
to where I can take that next step, and that's all we can ask.
Yeah.
Is just, am I going in the right direction, and do I have enough to see that next step in front of me?
Sure.
And that gave me one,
Yeah.
and that would, and then followed by another step and another
Yeah.
step after that. So that was a big
So
moment for
you
me.
doing Whiskey Jam, this was prior to you making the decision that you're moving to Nashville full time, right?
Right.
So you get Whiskey Jam that kind of validates your dream. It validates what God has put on your heart. It validates the passion that you have for music and songwriting.
Yeah.
So now you go back to Washington. You get out of this crazy mess of Music Row. You experience something great. So when you go back home, now what is like? Is that when you're like you and your wife are like, hey, let's make this move? Like
It
if we're in,
wasn't. No, it wasn't for probably another because that was
well, my daughter was born
yeah
in
21.
2021.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
so it wasn't until like I ended up so it was another probably 8 months or
Yeah.
because I ended up checking into the Utah place
Okay.
January of
Yeah.
22.
Yeah.
So it wasn't too long after that when really the wheels started falling off for me.
Yeah.
And it just made it more and more clear. Like that was just one more, even if it was passively just in the background of just like, okay, I'm giving you hints of what I want you to start aiming for.
Yeah.
But I wasn't listening. And it was, like I said, it wasn't until the wheels really fell off to where
Mhm.
it's like, I've got to make some drastic changes.
Yeah.
And then those pieces started really falling together
Okay.
on, okay, it's time to make some real changes and move.
Yeah.
And then once we said that out loud and kind of it started making more sense. The family was hard. Like once we kind of keyed them in,
Yeah.
but they, in a blessing way though, they were sad, but they 100% understood,
Sure.
and that was huge.
Yeah.
And they've all come out and visited several
Yeah.
times,
Yeah.
and our long game is obviously try to coax them out to the Tennessee area,
Yeah.
but
It's a great place for family to visit.
it is. It really is.
Yeah. My family loves coming
Yeah,
here.
it's like
Yeah.
if of all the places to move to, it's like at least Nashville and
It's a
like
fun
Tennessee.
place.
It's a pretty cool spot to come visit.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah. Any time of year, there's always something going on. Obviously, you can go to Broadway, but there's always there's something going on year round. So
Yeah.
it's a fun place to entertain guests and folks and friends that come visit.
Right.
And that's one been, it's hard being away from the West Coast because my family's all there too.
Right.
But again, I know that they enjoy coming here.
There's
So it's
worse
not,
there's worse places to move
yeah,
to.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So it's not like you got to pull teeth for people to come visit because, hey, who doesn't want to go have some fun in Nashville, you
Right.
know? Um, but let's talk about that transition. So now, like you and your wife, God has definitely put this on your heart.
Yeah.
It's validation that this is something that you want to pursue. You've experienced Whiskey Jam. You call me up. We find you a house. You move the family across the country to Old Dixon, Tennessee,
Yep.
away from your sphere, away from your comfort zone. It's you and a guitar. Where do you start? Like, how
So
did like?
so I think for me, like a lot of that, and I gotta, and it kind of we talk about even like where we talk about the initial transition of like skill sets from football to the police world. Where
Yeah.
I actually took a lot of the skill sets from the police world into music
Okay.
because even with your experience in music here and stuff like that this is a songwriting networking town.
Yeah.
This is where it's like
You have to be
you
here
have to
if
be
you
here,
want this to
but you have to
happen.
be able to be a part of the community.
Sure.
And a lot of that is like, it's you got to be out there and you got to be able to meet people. And
Yeah.
so getting over that fear of just like, I've talked to everybody from every walk of life,
Yeah.
with people that want to kill me versus people that are just victims in major crimes to just, jerks to great people. So it's
Yeah.
like, I got to talk to them all. So coming out here and going, hey, I got no time to mess around. It's like I got 3 little kids and a wife and a whole thing. I'm not, I need to start making up some ground.
Yeah.
So I started hitting up wherever. Like I started. I think one of the first, honestly, the first things I did was I jumped onto was like a local Facebook page for
Hmm.
my town. It's like, hey, I'm a singer songwriter moving out to this area. Where are places people play?
Yeah.
Who should I be talking to? And
Yeah.
then even things like, did you ever get in the Clubhouse wave when that was going on with like that app thing with like,
I don't think so. No.
okay, it was pretty big during COVID where I
Okay.
started to get a lot of info of folks that I should be looking at and like places to check
I
out.
think I've heard of it. Is it a Zoom type thing?
It was like
Or
it was like an audio only Zoom,
okay,
like
okay.
chat groups and stuff
Yeah,
like that.
okay. I did
But
hear about that.
yeah,
Yeah.
so I got into that for a little bit, but so I got a lot of information on like places to play for songwriters and things like, and
Yeah.
just familiar names that I was getting aware of, like
Yeah.
that I was putting on the back burner. But the locally thing, they kept hitting up. Um, a buddy now, his name's Zach Brooks. He's actually this is their shout out to Brandon Brooks. That's their band. He has a local music shop out in Dixon,
Yeah.
and he was like, "Hey, he's kind of got his pulse on the local music stuff. Go hit him up." And so I shot him a cold DM. I was like, "Hey, man,
Yeah.
I'm so and so. I'm moving to town. Would love to come say hi. How
Yeah.
are you? And just let me know if you guys need anything."
Yeah.
And I think it was like the next day that once I pulled into town, I went downtown because Jody and the kids weren't here yet because
Yeah.
they got here a few days after I did because I
Yeah.
drove out. It's a country song in itself. I
Yeah.
drove out with the trailer and the
Yeah.
dog,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
they flew out. I went in. Zach just happened to be there. I was like, "Hey, I'm Michael. Nice to meet you. Just let me know if you guys have anything going. If you need anything." And he goes, "Actually, I'm putting together a songwriter round at our local brewery like in a week or two. You want on it?" I'm like, "Yep." So I was like, just because I think a lot of the stuff out here is just being present. You
Yeah.
got to be here. You got to be present to win,
Yeah.
and you got to be available and just prepared for when opportunities come.
Yeah.
And if an opportunity comes, it's like you take a shot.
Well, also too, it's like it's not expecting to get anything out of those opportunities
Yeah.
too, in the sense of like, hey, like I will do whatever it takes just to get somewhere to write with somebody or
Yeah.
to play somewhere without expecting a dollar or expecting anything.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of people sometimes they only seek after those opportunities that they feel like they can massively benefit from,
Yes.
and in turn turn away those 100 other opportunities where it's just like it's brick by brick, dude. It's
Well,
like
and
no, seriously,
that's
hey, shout out Coach Rob Smith,
yeah,
hey, brick
facts.
by brick,
Yeah, facts.
season
Like oh,
2005,
five
shout
or
out.
six, something like that. That's
Yeah,
fun.
but that's
Well,
funny.
you're so right though, because the idea is that, but one of those opportunities you're seeking is probably one of those like
You look back and you're like, dude, that one that either I feel like I didn't play well or I didn't write well, that turned into something extremely significant.
facts. But
It
it's
doesn't happen overnight.
no, and if you try to, it's like that analysis paralysis. If you overanalyze
Yeah,
God's plans
yeah,
and try to go, I'm gonna be surgical about this.
yeah,
You're acting like you already have that figured out. Where
yeah,
it's like you don't. You just got to do your thing. It's
yeah,
like but have as many lines in the water as you can. And like I've
Yeah.
played many gigs
Yeah.
here in town and stuff like that. Shout out Live Oak. They've given me so many opportunities to play. And it's like sometimes it's like if I'm doing that early shift, it could be just me and the bartenders, maybe one or two folks, but that one or two folks, they could be just walking down here from Music Row, coming to get some wings and a drink, just to hang
Could be
out for,
somebody.
and it could be somebody.
Yeah, yeah.
And so it does me a disservice if I don't capitalize on that opportunity.
Yeah.
If nothing else, get good practice, hone my craft, and you never know who's listening.
Yeah.
And or if nothing else, not trying to be selfish, that it's how am I going to advance my career? Because the whole reason I'm out here and doing music and telling my stories is hopefully, it's healing for me because I'm telling my stories,
Yeah.
but hopefully it's going to help somebody else.
Yeah.
I'm not going to be able to accomplish that if I just only keep it into myself for
Yeah.
a certain select few people when I feel like it checks enough boxes. It's like that's just me being just, I don't know. It's just not. It doesn't make sense for me to do that.
Well, I
Versus,
look back on my like pursuing football, coming out of Western, it's like, you know, who am I going to seek help from if the NFL is my dream?
yeah,
Like, you know, the NFL is not knocking on Western's door to draft the next player, right? So it was like it wasn't the mainstream thing. Division 2 football in general is like that. People aren't going Division 2 to go to the league.
right,
So if the league is going to be my dream, I have to put myself in situations or I have to seek opportunities. So what I did is I found where the pros were training, just like you were finding the pros were writing, and I sought after those people and I just dove right into that
yeah,
community where I'm not a pro yet, but I need to be around pros, to better my skill, to understand the business, I just need to be around that type of community. And
right,
I was fortunate that there was a training facility that just opened up where all the pros were training. And I just dove right into that.
right,
Like I kind of felt like an outcast at first because here I'm this dude that's trying to make it. You guys have already done it, but I'm soaking up every little bit of information from them, the way they train and
yeah,
prepare, get ready for a workout, how do they, all that kind of stuff. And for you, kind of the same thing, right? You're like, if I'm gonna make this music thing happen, this can't happen in Monroe, Washington.
right.
You have to like fully dive
Yeah,
into this
you're putting too many
community.
chips in one basket, which is essentially
Yeah.
hopefully a video goes viral and something like that.
Well,
But
sure.
that's never guaranteed.
Yeah, that
And
doesn't
it's
happen to
like,
many people.
and that's just things you don't know. Like, one of my favorite lines was, you're always 3 minutes away from your life changing forever. As
Yeah.
far as like you're out here and you write that one song with certain folks that just hits. Like,
Yeah.
you had Walker on here the other day. It's like
Yeah.
his life and him and his whole family changed like that
Yeah.
when and he put his time in. But
Well,
it's
it
like
took about
it's
14 years for
it takes
Fancy
that.
Like to come to fruition,
But it
man.
takes that, but then it's like, but then that opens the
Yeah.
gates for everything else that he's got in store. And
Yeah.
hopefully, I'll put my time in. I keep putting my stuff out there and
Yeah.
just
But
and
it's what you got to do.
yeah,
And a lot of people are uncomfortable to do that, or they have too
right,
much ego or pride to want to do what you're doing
right,
because, hey, man, in this business, you got to have some humility. You got to go play at a bar where no one's there.
yeah.
You just got to put the time in. So speaking on that, I've listened to a few of your songs that are on Spotify. How Because dude, like your new single "Oh 45" that you just put out, the sound of that compared to music you put out or wrote a
Per,
few years ago,
yeah.
talk about just your growth as an artist, your growth as a writer and as a singer, like being here, how much has that helped you improve your skill set?
Oh, immensely. It's kind of like, well, I'll take your example of like you had to put yourself in that environment with the pros
Yeah.
to up your game and to be in that environment. It's the same thing.
Yeah.
It's like I think, and also just coming out here because there's so many different pros or professionals or just amazing artists, but all different walks of life and
Yeah.
all different styles. It's like I started getting more and more comfortable of, hey, what's my lane or what's my style or what's my message,
Yep.
and be comfortable in my own skin,
Yep.
and just and then double down on it
Yeah, just be
because
you.
and
Yeah.
just be me
Yep.
and that's okay. It might take a while,
Yep.
but I do myself no favors if I try to copy someone that's already doing something.
Yeah.
So a lot of that stuff, like you said in that song, was like it's an important one to me of just like, hey, there's a spiritual battle going on,
Yep.
and putting that out there of just like, hey, the devil's real,
Yeah.
and he's tempting us every day, and we
Yeah.
got to fight him as best we can.
Yeah.
And here's a couple ways we can.
Yeah.
So, and that just it made sense to me, and hopefully it makes sense to others. And
Yeah.
and just trying to be encouraging myself and just to write stuff that matters.
Yep.
And
But yeah, a lot of artists I think fall into the trap of like I gotta be like that person. I gotta
yeah.
be like her. I gotta sound like
And
them.
that's not to say don't take inspiration from that.
No, no,
It
but
just
if you try to fit
don't
yourself in,
copy and paste it.
if you try to fit yourself into that mold that you're not even fit for,
Yeah.
you're just gonna be spinning your tires and you're not gonna get anywhere.
Yeah.
Or and you're not being authentic and true to who you
Yeah.
are as an
Which is not which
artist.
at the end of the day is not sustainable
Yeah,
because you can't try to be someone else for your whole life because it's not you. And
yeah.
so,
And your next single can't try to sound like all of Morgan Wallen's songs on his album. Like
right,
that worked for him.
right,
It's not going to work for you. And I think there are a lot of people that fall into that trap. And it's not just in music, it's just with anything.
sure.
We're human by design. We like to follow the trend. We like to dress like the cool people. And when you try to, you just get worn out when you try to chase something that you're not meant to chase,
Right.
So, but being here, I mean, what has been like, honestly, like, what has been the massive benefit of being here
I think
outside of the
I
obvious?
think I think the inspiration of just the community of just the creatives in the for music specifically
Yeah,
is that like you said the talent is amazing.
yeah,
But I think what's so crazy and is that but everyone at the end of the day for the most part wants to see everybody else win and they want to see the best let's just call it art
yeah,
come to fruition.
yeah,
And if they're a part of it, great. If not, they might be a part of the next one because it's a community. It's just it's a great I think what was the adage of it's a big city but a small town
oh yeah.
of like
That's
for
the
music.
uniqueness of Nashville. I mean,
Yeah,
it's not LA, it's not New
yeah,
York, where I feel like everyone's trying to undercut somebody,
right,
in those major cities. Where in Nashville, it's like, hey, the massive producer that lives on that corner that
yeah,
you would never know will give the shirt off his back to help you in
right.
some sort of way.
Well, because I think it's very unique to where even though you have these crazy successful folks, but it's very unique in this this career path, this industry, because almost most part of a lot of them can all have roots to where you are right now.
Yeah,
So they all really get it.
yeah,
And so they were all in those shoes. And so I think there's very much as long as you're in it for the right reasons and you're
yeah,
not just trying to calculate, just like we talked about, like calculating, like I'm not gonna take that gig because it's not cool enough or
yeah,
it's not the right look. It's like take the gig, share your story, share your
yeah,
things because it's the same thing. It's like it's the same thing with like if you're over calculating, like, ooh, I want to go to that place because maybe I'll meet this person, maybe I can chum it up and he might put me on this round or he might give me a spot. It's like you're trying to you're just you're almost dehumanizing that relationship to where
mhm,
that person's not a person anymore.
yeah,
That person is a tool for it's no different than like, just a pen or a calculator or a
yeah,
patrol car. It's like they're just a tool to that job
yeah,
versus, hey, this is a relationship business that I'm finding out
yeah,
and just be a good person for the right reasons
yeah,
and just let that community kind of become a part of the community. Don't
yeah,
try to use the community.
yeah,
And I think that's been a very encouraging thing because everyone's so positive and just they're genuinely wanting to see you win, if you're there for the right reasons.
yeah,
And
yeah,
I think it's super awesome and it's very encouraging and it's very in a weird way it's definitely disarming
yeah,
where you can and I think that disarming part is crucial because it allows you to then be vulnerable with what you want to put out there, but it's harder to do that if you still have your guard up
mhm,
just in the everyday experiences where it's like, oh,
yeah,
I can go into a room with these writers that I don't know from Adam, tell them some deep stuff because the goal is for us to come together in a
yeah,
safe environment to put something out there that could hopefully mean something to somebody.
yeah.
And it's a cool thing to start figuring out.
Good, man. Let's touch on Old 45 a little bit.
Yeah.
So you just put that out not too long ago,
Yeah.
right?
Shout outs Grady and Saxon Studios. They
Yeah,
killed it.
the song sounds great. Like I said, when you listen to that, when you listen to some of the older songs that you put out compared to this one, it's just a completely different vibe. It sounds professional. I mean, your sound with vocally, I mean, it's a badass song,
Thanks,
dude.
bro.
It's really cool. It's and like I said before we started, like the opening chords and like the mysterious type of sound it has. Dude, I got like goosebumps, man. It was like,
Hell
and you
yeah.
mentioned Jelly Roll. It kind of has a little bit of like that Jelly Roll, like, you know, Southern rock kind of like vibe to it. And it's just, it's a great one, man. I'm so happy that you put that out, man.
Thanks, man.
But again, it goes back to me talking about your progression as an artist, like just listening to things from a year or 2 or 3 years ago compared to now, like the growth is obviously evident. I mean, what's like the goal and I mean, you trying to do an album? I mean, are you trying? I mean, what's
So
the?
yeah, and yeah, I mean, a lot of that's obviously I'm an independent.
Yeah,
I've still nobody knows who I
shout out
am.
all the indies, man.
It's
Like,
it's
yeah,
facts, but it's like
yeah,
there is some benefit of that creative control and just hey,
yeah,
it's because there's so much I'm figuring out. It's like I know so little in this industry. It's like I'm not even in anywhere near ready for to start signing in because it's like I don't know enough yet. It's like
yeah.
I don't. You're still testing the waters, but so for right now, at least shout out Grady again. He gave me some good advice on like, hey, until it makes sense. It's like for where you're at with especially with how much influence like streaming and stuff is right
Yeah,
now. It's like you're better off just putting out singles regularly,
yeah.
just so that way the algorithms and things like that
And then
keep
what is it called? Like an EP? Like you just release? What is an
well,
EP?
EP is just an extended play.
Okay,
It's like basically like an album light. It's like
okay.
an album's usually like 8 to 10 songs
Yeah,
plus.
yeah.
EP is usually anywhere from 4 to 6 songs.
Okay.
So and then singles are obviously just
Yeah,
singles.
yeah,
So my goal right now is just I mean, and honestly even to protect myself because you hope no one steals your stuff
yeah,
when you're playing live and stuff. But if your stuff's not protected or like down somewhere, it's like you could.
yeah,
So my plan right now is like I've just built like a little studio in my house,
yeah.
and I'm just going to be dropping just some. Well, actually, I mean, I have another song we're putting out here next month that we did at Grady's, "The Road Unknown." So I'm super excited about that one.
Cool, man.
That's gonna be fun. But then besides that, going to be just dropping like just some clean acoustic versions, really of just even songs that because obviously production costs
Yeah, yeah,
and definitely on the starving end of the singer songwriter spectrum for now.
yeah,
But that's all right.
yeah,
You got to cut your teeth.
yeah,
But until it makes sense to cut another one, like
yeah,
I'm going to put out a bunch of these acoustic ones. And really, a lot of that's going to be even songs that I probably would never have considered doing full production. But I think it still tells stories and stuff like that. And it's like, I
yeah,
think it's cool for people to see just almost like the behind the scenes of like, hey, not every song that's put out might not be a banger, but it's still got some benefit, hopefully, to
yeah,
somebody. So
yeah.
and you're still feeding the fire of just, hey, still putting music out and still kind of honing my
You got to
craft.
stay relevant. You got to stay consistent. That's what
Yeah.
I'm learning with the podcast game. It's
Yeah.
like, hey, it's cool if I can put out an episode, but can you do it consecutively every single week for months on end? Continue to keep that audience, that small audience engaged,
Yep.
and like you just slowly, brick by brick, baby. Like you
Yep.
were like just slowly building this thing
When
out.
and you don't know what's gonna hit. I mean,
No,
a
yeah,
song I may put
yeah,
out that like I would have never thought to put out because it's just gonna sit on the hard drive.
yeah,
It might resonate with some people. I
yeah,
mean, and just you never know. And you go, well, that one's hitting pretty good.
yeah,
Maybe that's the one I'll record next
yeah,
because
yeah,
you just never know because you're dealing
yeah,
with people and emotions and just where
yeah,
it's gonna hit people and
yeah.
just hopefully something takes off. But if nothing else, I still am enjoying the hell out of being out here and trying to figure this game out.
Well, it certainly seems like you just based off of social media and just your enthusiasm of being out here. And I mean, I'm biased. I think it's a great place to live and raise a
It is.
family.
It is.
And I'm happy that you are here, happy that you trusted me in this process, helping you get out here.
Yep.
But man, I'm just grateful that shared your story. Obviously, some very difficult things to talk about regarding your experience with law enforcement. But hopefully this story can resonate with a lot of listeners to, whether they're an officer or a starving artist,
Yep.
somebody they're on that fence of like, hey man, do I pursue this or not? I mean, I think your story is an incredible one to where there's some massive impact that can help somebody make that decision. Like, hey, I'm just going to go for it,
Yeah.
man.
Well, it's almost like the way I kind of look at it a little bit when because people be like, "Well, when did you think you're ready?" It's like you're not. It's almost like having
Yeah,
kids.
yeah,
It's
I
like
know. Yeah,
you're never totally ready to have kids.
yeah, yeah.
Just start, you'll figure it out,
Just do it.
and
You,
you won't regret it.
yeah,
But
yeah.
you will regret if you never take that shot.
Yeah, yeah. So kudos to you for doing that, man, because not a lot of people, and again, to your wife as well,
Facts.
100%
Yeah.
facts, because she co-signed on this move.
Yep.
She got ripped away from her family and her sphere and her
Yep.
comfort zone to come out here and to trust the process and trust God into this whole thing. And you're obviously your faith has been incredible through this entire process. And I wish nothing but the best for you and your wife and your kids out here. And man, just keep grinding, man, like you
That's it.
are, and hopefully you're on that stage at whiskey jam again and get
Yeah.
those opportunities
God
and
willing.
and I'll be there, man. I'll be there.
Hell yeah.
Is the goal like, I mean, I know this is like potentially so far fetched, but like as an artist here in town, is the goal like always like the Ryman?
I
Is that
think
like is that like
The Ryman's a goal. The Opry's a
yeah,
goal. I mean,
is that like the pinnacle of like
I think there's a couple key stages
Yeah.
like that I think would be amazing. I mean, even as from the Northwest, I mean, playing the Gorge
Hey, yeah.
would be ridiculous.
Be a little
You know,
watershed action.
yeah, the
Yeah.
Gorge. I mean, I think Red Rocks would be dope.
Yeah.
Even the caverns here, if out here in
Yeah,
Tennessee, would
yeah,
be.
yeah.
But like, I think locally, I think like the Ryman and the Opry would
Yeah.
be
And
pretty
dude,
rad.
keep dreaming because man, and Whiskey Jam is one too.
Yeah.
You know?
Yep.
It is. And it's like, dude, you have to have a dream, man.
Yep.
And you have to chase it. And it's like, and I definitely believe in God divine dreams, man. Like
Amen.
I God put football on my heart. And
Yep.
there was so many different forks in the road that I could have took. And for whatever reason, like God kept that football fire lit, even if it was just an ember, like,
Yep.
but that's all I needed to keep going. And
Yep.
with music for you, man, I just keep doing and keep staying authentic to you. And it's cool having just one of my bros in town, and we could reminisce on Western football, and we can reminisce on certain things, and but it's cool to see you chasing a dream, man. It
Hell
really
yeah.
is. So I appreciate you sharing your story and allowing us to share your story to our listeners. So I think this is great, man.
I
You did,
appreciate
did a
it.
great job, and
It's been an honor.
yeah, man. So we'll have to do it again.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. So let us know about when the next one's dropping. But check out Old 45 on Spotify,
Yep.
Apple Music too.
Yeah, it's on all the
Oh
platforms.
yeah, everywhere. But yeah, dude, just keep going, bro. Appreciate you, man. Love you, man.
Love you, bro. It was great.
Let's go.